man whose voice has echoed through some of the largest stadiums in America, as well as locker rooms, radio waves, and hearts. Rob Maaddi isn't just a journalist, he's a storyteller on a mission and someone who's living a purpose-driven life. From covering the NFL for over two decades, to launching Faith on the Field, to writing bestsellers like Birds of Prey, Rob has lived at the intersection of faith, pressure, and purpose. He's interviewed legends, been a voice in millions of homes, and still leads with humility, heart, and boldness. Rob's life is proof that you can stand for truth, lead with faith, and still show up in the world's biggest arenas. I'm honored to dive deep into conversation with him today. Rob, let's go. Welcome to BFKNBOLD, brother.
Brett, man, it's great to be with you. I appreciate it, and thank you for that welcome and that introduction.
Well, you know what? And I'm going to be completely honest. That's the way I live. That's the way I roll. I sent the same invite that I sent you. I'm going to say close to 100. I'm going to say close to 100 different personalities, and you are up there with the best of them, the biggest of them, the most popular of them, and you've excelled and exceeded to a level that is very impressive. And I have to say that you responded to me. For somebody who's just starting off, I was beat up, down for the count with suicidal depression for 5 years, nonstop, around the clock. It's as if somebody locked me in a solitary confinement, locked the door, took the key, and walked away. That's where I was for 5 years. January of this year, 2025, I made a decision that I'm going to use my story as a platform to be a voice for people who are struggling. Now, I'm just starting off, and you're way at the top, and you still took time out of your day to be here with me. And I got to tell you something. I don't think there's words that can express the gratitude I have for you. So I could end the interview now without you saying another word, and would give people a clear understanding of who you are as a person. So I really do appreciate you being here, brother.
Brett, listen, man, I think that for me, all of us are created in God's image, and all of us are equal, and nothing should be measured by what we've accomplished or what we've achieved, because in God's eyes, we're all created in His image. He loves us all the same, and whether you're a gazillionaire or whether you're the person who is struggling to make ends meet, whether you're accomplished in a field or whether you're just starting out in a field, all of us should treat each other the same way, with dignity, with respect, with humility. So I do get a ton of requests, but when you reached out to me, told me a little bit about your story, and said, let's talk a little bit about mental health and encouraging people. Man, this is what I'm passionate about. And so many people out there who I've seen who are hurting, who are struggling, who are going through it, who are in those positions where they don't know where to turn, right? Where they're searching for answers, and they feel like they're at the bottom of like their wits end, and they need some hope, they need some inspiration, they need some encouragement, and I'm always willing to share what helped me, because I know if it can help one more person, then that's all that matters. And whether it takes me 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 2 hours to find that time to just help one person. And if we all live our life if we all help one person at a time, and that person helps another, and then that person helps another, and how does that grow? How does that develop? How many people are getting that help that they need? So, man, it's an honor that you thought of me, and I appreciate just being here with you.
Man, that means a lot to me. It really does. And that leads me to my question is that why is mental health so close to your heart? I've done my research. I understand you have expressed how you had suffered in silence, but bring us up to date. Let's get to the backstory of why this is so close to you.
Yeah, man. So when you think of mental health, right, for so many years, Brett, there's been this stigma around it. People thought of, all right, well, yeah, mental health is for those who are seeking psychiatric care, who are going through those types of issues that warrant such kind of being, whether it's in a hospital, in an institution, wherever it may be. And as my role has evolved in journalism, covering the NFL, more players that I have talked to that have dealt with issues regarding their mental health, being able to speak to some teams. There's been some people out there who had some impact on my life in that area. The Indianapolis Colts, for example, are a team that are at the forefront in the NFL of kicking the stigma as it relates to mental health. And that was really driven by their owner, Jim Irsay, who has now passed away recently in May. And his daughter, Kalen Jackson, is kind of carrying that torch forward and doing phenomenal things in that area. But just sitting down with Jim a few years ago and hearing his story, hearing how he overcame addiction and overcame you're talking about someone who has all the money in the world, owns an NFL team, yet that wasn't enough. Yet he was going through so much, and how that he wanted to help other people. It just got me thinking about how many other players' stories could resonate, can help folks along the line. So I did this for a couple of years without speaking about my own experiences, about what I went through, about some of the things, because I didn't want to make that correlation. I didn't want to say that, yeah, I just wanted to encourage using other people's stories without sharing my own. And it wasn't only until recently that I decided that, hey, maybe I'm more willing, more open. I get invited to speak at a lot of different places, a lot of different events. And you're familiar with the Jersey Mike's chain, right? The Jersey Mike's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was invited to speak at a Jersey Mike's event that was in Tampa, Florida. And they had a lot of their employees in there, and I wanted it, and the topic was to speak to them about mental health. And it was really the first time I kind of shared my perspective, what I went through, my story, some of the things, and it goes back to just, and there's cycles, and there's different turns, and so there was one aspect of it. And then only a few years ago, it's coming up on 3 years, I lost my dad. And that kind of changed things for me too. Sure. And that kind of impacted me in a little way, when you lose a loved one and then you hold that, you hold that in, and you don't share your grief, and you don't talk about it, and you try to be the tough guy. But essentially it comes down to growing up in an environment where I'm playing sports, I'm around different athletes, I'm around just always thinking of things from a competitive side, from a competitive nature, from being different. Though in my neighborhood, my parents were immigrants from the Middle East, and just always standing out and being different than the other kids. I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood in South Philly, yet I didn't quite fit in. So not quite fitting in when you're a kid impacts the way you behave. And I had decided that I was going to try and stand out rather than fit in. But the ways that I decided, Brett, to stand out was, well, one, there's three things. I said, I'm going to be the best student I possibly can. I want to be smarter than everybody else. My brother, 4 years older than me, was always the top of his class, valedictorian, graduated with honors in college, and is doing great things as an engineer. So he set that example for me. So I decided there's three ways I'm going to stand out, because I don't fit in with these people or this crowd or this group. I'm a little bit different than they are. And it was do the best I can in school, which I did, be as great of an athlete as I possibly can. I was always good in sports, especially baseball, went and played college baseball. And then I decided, I wanted to look as good as I possibly can to be able to date as many beautiful women as possible. That led me down the wrong path. Mm-hmm. That led me down a road where I went through, made a lot of mistakes, because that's a selfish attitude. That's a selfish behavior. That's just trying. So I went through relationship after relationship, and ended up just not being faithful in these relationships, led to a divorce, led to all kinds of difficulties. And then, Brett, I said to myself, I'm going to fix those problems. I'm going to fix that on my own, right? I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to figure it out. And it just went from one to another, to another, the cycle repeating, the issues being the same in those relationships, me being the problem all the time. And I reached a point in 2010 where I was like at the bottom, rock bottom. And at rock bottom, like I was tired of, I was finally, after several years of various relationships, I found myself single, officially single for about a few months period of time there. And there was I was never I've never smoked a thing in my life, never did any drugs in my life, and never liked alcohol. But for a period of 36 days in 2010, I had at least one drink every day, at least one. But I went out and partied and just did I was finally single, so I lived it up. And I was headed down a path of self-destruction because as hard as I worked to look my best on the outside, I felt ugly inside because I wasn't happy with the person I was. I wasn't happy with what I did. And all of this, I come to realize, I mean, these are, I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling shame.
Right.
I'm feeling all of these feelings for the relationships that I had, that I didn't live up to those expectations of the other person, for disappointing them, for hurting them in a way where they, that look on someone's face when they realize you weren't faithful in a relationship. I never wanted to see that again. I never wanted to do that again in my life. So I had so much guilt, so much regret that I was abusing my body by going out there and partying and living it up. And it was through a series of God putting different people in my life that one day I found myself at Times Square Church in New York City. And although I had always been a religious person, although I had always been someone who prayed and went to church, and I grew up in the Catholic school system, Catholic church system, I never really, for me, it was put Jesus on a pedestal, go pray on Sunday, do whatever I want to do for 6 days, go to confession, start that all over. But I was in Times Square Church in August of 2010, and I surrendered my life to Christ. For the first time in my life, I said, Lord, I can't do this on my own. I need you to help me be the man you created me to be. And at that moment, I tell everyone, I went from being a fan of Jesus to a follower of Jesus. And that changed the whole dynamic in my life. That allowed me to now try and emulate someone who was the greatest leader, the greatest person who walked the face of the earth, rather than trying to emulate the athletes that I covered, that I could never be, right? I grew up wanting to be a professional athlete, fell short. I wanted to get married and have kids, fell short. Everything I had done to that point, I was falling short. Well, that moment, I finally surrendered everything. I turned it over to the Lord. I accepted him as my Lord and Savior. I invited him into my heart. And from there, I went on. I was changed. I was a different person. But you still got to go through so many things along the way, right? Adversities and challenges. And there's consequences for our behavior, our old patterns, and what we've done, and the mistakes we've made, and all of that. And eventually, 4 or 5 months after that, I meet Remy, who would go on to become my future wife. We were blessed with 2 children. But it's a constant battle, and it's a constant challenge. And then things are going good, things are going great. And then a few years ago, I lose my dad. I go through that again. And then I go through feeling guilty. I'm in the hospital. My dad's going through cancer, and my wife and I and the kids moved to the Florida, the Tampa area. And I felt guilty for leaving my dad and my mom. So there was feelings of guilt again. There was feelings of abandonment. There was feelings of I didn't do enough to help out my family. Here I am going off and living in palm trees and beaches and living it up, and my family's suffering. My dad's suffering, to the point where, Brett, the day that my dad passed, I'm in the hospital room with him, and I cover the NFL for the AP. There's big news surrounding Deshaun Watson. I'm texting and calling sources and agents and people while my dad's in a hospital bed, his dying moments, his dying day. And I felt guilty after that. I felt terrible after that. And that had a negative impact on my mental health. So it took me some time to overcome that, to come to terms with that, to come to grips with that, talking to my mom, who told me how proud my dad was of me and my accomplishments, and how he would have wanted me working in that moment because there was nothing else left to do. And he was
Right.
always pushing me and saying, hey, go out there and do your job and do the best you can. So it all of this has become a passion for me because I see so many people who are hurting, who are searching, who are looking for answers. And I just want to tell them what worked for me was prayer and a relationship with the Lord. That may not be your recipe. You may have a different recipe, but I promise you this, there is a recipe for you. You're not alone. You're not the only person going through whatever it is that you're going through. Others have, and others have overcome. And I hope that you will feel encouraged enough to reach out and talk to somebody, because the worst thing that we can do is keep it to ourselves. There are professionals out there. There are hotline numbers. There is everything out there, resources to help you. And the one that I turned to was one that never let me down. The one who I turned to was Jesus Christ, and that's what's helped me come out of it.
That's amazing, man. It's an amazing story. And as you're talking, I'm feeling everything you're going through. There's just so much to unpack there. There's a lot of emotions in what you just said. And there's your faith, you built your faith on such a rock solid foundation that whoever you come in contact with is going to feel that energy and believe you. Not just because your words, Rob, but because what I'm hearing, what you literally through this computer, I'm feeling what you're saying. And the first question I want to ask you is that when you're around these guys and you're sensing that there's something they're not sharing with you, are you able to get them to open up? Because you're around super athletes. Let's face it, you're around some top-notch guys, super athletes, top athletes. But I'm going to guess there are times when you can pick up on when that dude is not feeling his best, or there's something that's weighing heavy on his mind. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, Brett, we forget that a lot of these athletes are humans, right? So often, from a fan perspective, from a media perspective, we look at these guys and say they're making millions of dollars, they're set financially for life. That doesn't mean they don't have the problems that we deal with. They may not be dealing with paying bills on a daily basis, but they're still dealing with, whether it's relationship issues, children, whether it's parents. There's always something outside of finances that other people are dealing with. Mm-hmm. And that can be added. Then add the pressure of living up to, if you're in a city like where I was originally from and spent most of my life, Philly, where fans demand success and fans demand that a player live up to his contract. If you're getting a $300 million contract like Bryce Harper received, or you're getting a contract like Jalen Hurts received, $250+ million, $50 million plus a year, they're demanding that you live up to that. And so there's some pressure, huge pressure attached to that. So there's a lot of times that these guys are going through trying to manage their daily life, their day-to-day, like their dads, their husbands, their sons, their whatever it is that they have to do as just a normal, regular person, with the enormity of the job and the task they have in the spotlight, under the public pressure, where everything they say is dissected and every action they make is analyzed. That's a ton of pressure. So, yeah, I come across a lot of players who are going through certain things and emotionally, and we talk about overcoming it spiritually. And in many of these guys are they've got a psychologist that they reach out to, some weekly. I tell people that even the greatest, like Tom Brady, to me, he's the GOAT of all time, greatest quarterback, and maybe greatest NFL player of all time. He's got a psychologist that he spoke to on a daily basis, and he had since coming out of college. So
Michigan, yeah.
No matter who you are, and no matter what you've accomplished, it doesn't. You're not immune to the troubles, the challenges, the adversities of daily life. So I see that all the time, and sometimes I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where Guys, I've got that rapport. I've got that relationship with them. I've prayed with God. I've used to party with players. Now I tell people I pray with them, and I've come full circle. And it's a whole different lifestyle, and it's a whole different feeling, and it's a whole lot more fulfilling than to be able to sit there in a room and just pray with a dude and be able to say, man, I hope you're whatever it is. I hope you get through this. Maybe send them a Bible verse here, and it just builds relationships that way. And it's been incredible, and just being able to do that.
In that the next question, you say making a difference. You've been quoted as saying making a difference is a blessing. When was the first time you realized that wasn't just a motto? It just wasn't a bunch of words and letters. When did it really hit home for you?
Yeah, that's my sign off, Brett. Every time I like to finish a radio show with, I'm Rob Maaddi, reminding you, make a difference, be a blessing, make a difference. I think we're all put on this earth for something greater than just our jobs and our job title, right?
Yep.
We all have a profession, but I feel like our purpose is greater than our profession. And our purpose, my passion is sports. I use sports, the passion that I have for sports, as a platform to fulfill my purpose, which is to help other people, making a difference by helping others. How can you help others? Well, if they're hurting, if they're struggling, if they're seeking, if they're searching, and they don't know where to go for answers, and you can lead them in that, nudge them in that right there, encourage them, inspire them, whatever it may be, that's making a difference. That's being a blessing to someone else. I feel like we're filled with a world where there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of despair. You turn on the news and everything is scary and all of that stuff. But beyond that, behind that, what are we doing to make someone's day? What are we doing to help someone else feel better about themselves in that moment?
Rob, this is no secret that there is a huge presence of ego. You see it, in that space you're in. It's a lot of ego, and you're walking in there saying faith in the field, put God first. There's got to come a time when it's is it always met with open arms, or does the ego? And my definition of ego, acronym is eliminating God's options or eliminating God's outcomes. Ego, we heard that, you heard the different phrases for that, but it's a huge ego game. It's a huge ego play. And you're walking in there, a guy who's humble, extremely humble and down to earth. Are you met with that little bit of a resistance? Like there's got to be a crossroad, because what you're doing and the space you're in, there's a dichotomy there.
Yeah, I can see where that could lead to potential some of that resistance. I haven't faced it with athletes or coaches or anyone in sports. I think the only time, and I faced it from trolls on social media, fans.
Yeah.
I faced it quite a bit that way. And when we talk about mental health too, just to tie that in a little bit, there was a period of time where I would allow some of the negativity. I mean, people are vicious on social media, Brett. People can be, you've seen it, you know what it's like. People will say the meanest things when they don't even have their face on their avatar, and it's just keyboard flexing their keyboard muscles. They'll say some of the worst things. And there was a period of time in my life, I would say from like 2019 to 2021, a little bit in there, where I allowed that to kind of negatively impact my mental health. My kids they're going on 12 now, so they were probably 5, 6. I'd be sitting there trying to sit with them at night, read them a bedtime story, pray together, all of that. Yet I'm my fault scrolling through, reading my responses that people are saying to me on Twitter, and it's putting me in a bad mood where I shouldn't even be thinking about that. Mm-hmm. I should be spending this quality time with my kids. Then now I'm putting them to sleep. I'm still thinking about what some nameless, faceless jerk said to me. Now I'm going to go carry it into seeing my wife before I go to bed. And I had to really come to the realization of I either don't read this I certainly don't respond to it. I make sure that I respond with grace, right, or don't respond at all. Hit the mute button, hit the block button, whatever it is, but never say anything negative back. But don't allow it to have that much of an impact on my mental health. So the only and what I found was a lot of times you give a sports opinion or anything related to that, because that's what I do in sports, and people will then associate me being a man of faith with my sports opinion and then attack me that way, because they just do these things. That's what they do. And you can't allow that to impact you. You can't read that. And I did for a period of time. And that was, that's why I think mental health is a constant challenge, right? It's a constant mental wellness. To make sure you put yourself in a position where you are well enough to not deal with, to be able to overcome, to be able to not let things affect you or impact you. So I did a terrible job for a year and a half or so with that, and have learned from it, have grown from it. And now I'm able to tell others, like, it's easy for a player. They go through something and you drop a pass or you throw an interception, and they're going to come after you on now in the days of like gambling is everywhere and fantasy football is everywhere, and somebody loses a ton of money. They're attacking you on social media, and the worst thing that a guy can do is respond to that. So I've had some great stories about some responses turning into incredible outcomes later.
You consider that here's the barometer that I use is that I have never met anybody who has integrity, has high morals, that's going to bash you or say anything negative about you in a way that's going to cut you down, blow your flame out to make theirs look brighter. I mean, that. Have you ever met anybody that's has their act together, or who's living a purpose-driven life of integrity that's going to try to cut you down? I haven't. So I always consider the source. It's easier said than done. I know you're in a different space, obviously, and you get bombarded. At the same time, do you understand what I'm saying? Is like that's not coming from a source that's healthy-minded. It never is. I haven't met anybody. I mean, give me a good coach. What's a coach, NFL coach, you have a good rapport with?
Retired, but Tony Dungy's a guy who is, to me, the standard. Yeah, he's a stand-up guy. He's the standard for. I mean, this is a guy who motivated his team. He didn't get some jobs early on in his career because owners thought you can't lead a team and be a man of strong faith who doesn't use foul language, because he doesn't. How can you command a huddle? How can you lead these men without dropping F-bombs? Yet he did it. He won a Super Bowl, and he had tremendous success. Yet there were some teams reluctant to hire him for that. So to me, he's like he's up there as the standard.
Okay, so let's use this. You would never hear those comments coming out of Dungy's mouth. Absolutely not. Right? So that's how I look at that. That's a great example. Dungy, I mean, that man lost his son, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and people will attack him for that, and people will attack him for so many different reasons, and he's a man who he's been a stand-up guy for a long time. There's a lot of people who I think, and to your point, it's a great one, because you have to consider the source
always.
When someone's attacking you so viciously on social media, I've come to the point where they need help. So
you're right.
Rather than, and this is like, at first I didn't want to, after I realized, like, all right, I went through that year and a half where I'm like trying to respond and like letting it bother me, to just blocking them and muting them. I'm like, but that's not, they need help. And by doing that, I can't possibly help them. So there was one particular example of someone who I just responded to, like, hey man, you need some prayer. And this guy like got really pissed with me saying you need some prayer. And he responded even more viciously. And I then DM'd him instead of putting it on the, I don't want that stuff on my timeline. And I was like, I think you really need some prayer. I'd be more than happy to pray for you, because for you to attack me, and it was something stupid. I don't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And again, he responded and didn't say anything. About 6 months, a year later, I can't even remember when it was. This person reached out to me and he said, "I just wanted to tell you that your response initially ticked me off, but then you persisted with offering to pray for me as opposed to cursing me out. And all I wanted you to do was to say something negative, and you didn't. And it made me want to understand you." And he tuned into my radio show, Faith on the Field, and he heard an episode that I had done with Derrick Henry, the
Running
running
back.
back now with Baltimore. At that time, he was with Tennessee.
Yep.
And I believe the episode I was talking about breaking chains of addiction, breaking chains of feeling like you're in bondage and turning to the Lord. So he told me that he heard that episode. He was going through addiction, alcohol addiction, and that kind of encouraged him to, one, go to church, seek a relationship with the Lord, and seek sobriety. So he reached out to me to tell me that he had just gotten baptized and he was X amount of days sober. And to me, that was like amazing, that all I did was say, "Dude, I'm going to pray for you," rather than curse you out for being mean and vicious to me. And it led to this person. That to me is the epitome of what does it mean to make a difference? What does it mean to be a blessing? Respond with grace to someone who is being just an absolute jerk to you,
Right.
and you never know what's going through their life. So this is a guy who's an alcoholic, who's struggling with all this stuff, and now by doing that, he ends up getting baptized and being sober, and hopefully he's still going strong and still hasn't turned back. And I know he's got challenges, and this was a few years back that I got this message, this note, but it kind of solidified for me, like, yeah, you're doing it the right way. You're not responding the way you should be responding, if at all.
Yeah, so that's exactly what my point being is that you put yourself in a category as Dungy. You guys, you're not going to respond like the jackass is responding to you online, so you got to always consider that source. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit because I heard something earlier. You said that you met Remy in 2011? 10, right?
Yeah,
10, okay.
December 6, 2010.
Okay, and then three years later, are you on this TV series called Marriage Boot Camp? Was it 3 years later?
No, that was right away. Well, no, 2012 we got married, so it's a year and it's almost 2 years later. Marriage Boot Camp came out in 2013, but it was filmed in 2012. So we had this idea of in reality TV's fake, Brett. None of it's real. So you take on these personalities, and the only difference between reality TV and acting is it's not scripted, so you have to give them an outcome that they're looking for, but they're not giving you the words or the dialogue to perform, so you have to do it on your own. So in some ways it's harder, but we ended up on Marriage Boot Camp. That we had no issues in our relationship, no issues whatsoever, but they wanted to build a show off of our relationship, and we wanted to tell people about the work Jesus had done in our life, but Hollywood doesn't go for that, so you never saw that on TV, man. You never saw when we're praying, when we're holding, like they portray it a certain way and all that stuff. But eventually, we reached a point where we did our own show. We did one episode. We started filming another, but our daughters were born, and we didn't like where the storylines were going to go. Yep. So we walked away. We walked away from it.
Gotcha. So that's great. So now you're talking to the newlyweds here. The couple is about to get married. You're going to give them some advice because obviously you've been in that marriage now for quite a while, 12, 13, maybe 14 years. You speaking to the young couple who's about to go to the altar and say, "I do," that, things change. Marriage things do change. It's not the honeymoon. The honeymoon phase is over. Now let's get to this. We got a game of life ahead of us now. So what's the advice you're telling these young people who are getting into the game of marriage? Because it's not easy, as you know.
Communication is key. I think communication is number one in a relationship. You've got to be able to talk things through. Remy and I had some problems communicating early on in our relationship where We were better communicators via text message than we were verbally going back and forth. And if you find yourself in that position, that's okay. As long as you articulate your feelings, your thoughts, whatever it is that you're going through, to be able to discuss, to have those conversations with each other. Ideally, it's sitting down face to face without screaming, without yelling. Those are challenging at times. It's going to happen. That stuff, you're not the worst wife or the worst husband in the world if that comes out in those moments. But I think communication is essential in any successful marriage, and respect. Number one has got to be respecting each other, respecting the sanctity of that marriage, and being able to just show each other love, compassion, care, grace. And things are going to happen. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be difficulties. There's always adversity in life. And for us, our relationship is built. The foundation is our faith. And praying together, reading the Bible together, just helped us immensely, especially early on when we had some challenges and something. When you're first in a marriage and you're just getting used to each other and all of that stuff, we were able to lean heavily on our faith. And now that we're parents, we see that reflected in our daughters. One of my two twins is always like, don't forget to pray, don't forget to pray. And it's the cutest thing. I mean,
love that,
they're
yeah.
about to turn 12 and she's like, hey, Daddy, don't forget to pray. All right. And
awesome.
we see that in the household. We see that in the relationship. So communication, respect, and certainly what's worked for us is a prayer life together.
That's awesome. Speak about your daughters, man. You've covered Hall of Famers. You've been up there with the best of them, top athletes, elite athletes. What would you want your daughters to remember about you, Dad? How do you want them to see you?
Man, that's a great question, Brett. I think I would want them to see me as someone who tried to live out my motto every day, making a difference and blessing others. Make a difference in other people's lives, be a blessing to others, and live your way, live your life in such a way that people who know you but don't know Christ will come to know Christ because they know you. I've heard that saying somewhere, and I kind of adopted it. I love it, but that's what beyond the accomplishments, beyond the books or the TV appearances or the radio shows or the legacy of faith on the field or anything else. I think the greatest thing I can leave for my kids is them knowing that the most important part of life is not living it on your own and living it for yourself, but it's trying to go through a day and making a positive impact on other people.
Brother, that's what you're doing. You're doing that. And you touch on something, the books, the success. When you started this journey, Rob, you started this journey off, you had an idea of how it was going to be. You must have had a vision of what you were getting into. What have you realized after being so successful and now having a taste of everything you've been through, the experience of it all? How was there anything different than where you are currently than when you first started this journey as to what you thought it was going to be? Were there any revelations like, oh, okay, I had this idea that when I get to this certain pinnacle, when I get to this level, that it was going to be this way, and maybe not good or bad, but just what was the biggest realization you had that really wasn't living up to those expectations of how you thought it was going to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think when I first set upon a career in journalism, in media, in everything that I'm doing, I had these goals, but my priorities were messed up. So, Brett, I chased fame. I chased success. I chased glory. I chased status. I chased wealth. I chased all of that stuff. And it left me broken, unfulfilled, and empty inside. And I tell people I've achieved and accomplished most of my goals, but it wasn't until I stopped chasing the success and the fame and the glory and the status and started chasing a relationship with Jesus that I was able to get to the point where I was enjoying and found peace and found hope in what I've been able to do and what I've been able to accomplish. So when you chase the wrong thing, and I think we live in a world that gives us a lot of false promises. I think
Yeah.
we live in a world that tells you money's going to buy you happiness. No, I see that on a daily basis, especially with the athletes that I talk to who are struggling with whether it's mental health issues or anything else. Money does not buy you happiness. Money buys you opportunity. Money gives you a chance, but it doesn't buy you happiness. I think this world promises us and tells us that, hey, if you have all these material things, if you have this status, if people love you and adore you and see you on television or hear you or whatever, you're going to have it all. You're going to be happy, and that's everything. And that's fake. That's false. That's going to end if we continue to seek the adoration of man, of other people. We'll never be satisfied, because people will always, one way or another, someone's going to attack you, someone's going to criticize you, someone's going to be disappointed in you. You can't make everyone happy all the time. But if we seek the acceptance of the Lord and living our life his way and making him happy, that's the ultimate. That's the pinnacle. That's when you'll find true peace, joy, and happiness.
Within.
Yes.
Within.
Yes. Within.
And
Within.
you have to see on a daily basis, especially the space you're in, you see guys where you were, chasing it, not really understanding the value of faith. So when you see that, Rob, do you I mean, you want to help, right? But you can't help, obviously you can't help everybody, but what is your message, even if somebody listening right now thinking, okay, when I get X, Y, Z, when I meet her, when I meet him, when I get the car, the house, the job, then I'll be happy. And I know, we've experienced that's not the case. So what's your message to that person, those people who think that's going to bring them the happiness or fulfillment they're chasing or seeking?
Yeah, I'll let them know that's never going to stop. If you think a relationship will be the ultimate happiness point for you, you may come to a point in that relationship where it ends, and then what? Or you may come to a point in that relationship where now that person no longer fulfills you. You want something else. If you think it's a car or a house or it's a job, again, you may come to a point where you may not have that any longer. It may be taken from you, or you may get tired of it and want something else in its place. And that's why I emphasize what worked for me was coming to that realization, coming to that point in my life where I understood, where I knew that all of this stuff that I'm chasing, it can add up and accumulate, and it can look great to everybody on the outside, but it's not enough. And we're never going to be satisfied if we keep seeking the acceptance of other people. And that's why for me, it's like faith is the firm foundation. Faith is where it's built upon, because without it, you crumble. Right? Without it, we can be shaken, and I want to be unshakable.
Unshakable.
That's
right.
And that's why I stand firm on that.
I hit Glazer up on IG, Jay Glazer, Fox Sports, and he appreciates. I mean, I reached out because he speaks very openly about his mental health as well, and he was he was very instrumental. I would hear his story about how he had to grind just to get through his days, and Michael Strahan was a big part of him getting through a lot of his toughest challenges. And, why do you think you speak openly about it? I'm speaking openly about it. Glazer speak. Why do so many men not want to speak about something that's so prevalent? It's very prevalent. It's very prevalent.
Yeah, it's a great question, and sometimes it's unfortunate when I have these conversations with younger players or players who've retired, and they come back and say, you don't want it to be viewed upon as a weakness. And I think that goes back to the part where I spoke about earlier with the former Colts owner, Jim Irsay, who passed away recently, kicking the stigma in their initiative of letting people know that, one, it's not a weakness.
No.
This is not a problem. You are not weaker for talking about the issues or dealing with or addressing them or seeking help. You're, in fact, stronger for it. You're doing the right thing. So I think you go back to the way, when I grew up, when you grew up, it was all about tough it out, man up, be a man. That's what we heard. Like, be a man. What does it mean to be a man? Rub dirt on it, right? That's what we used to hear. Like,
Right.
oh, men don't cry. Tough it out.
Yeah.
Grind it out. And I would apply that mentality, that sports mentality of whether I was playing baseball, whether I'm playing football, whatever it is, to my personal life. Now I want to tough it out if I'm dealing with an issue. I want to grind it out. I want to man up. I want to be as tough as I can be, and then we block ourselves into this kind of feeling of I can't be vulnerable or I can't show emotion because I'm now weaker, or I'm showing other people I can be defeated. So some players, and this is a constant challenge. It's a constant struggle. Like if a guy's on a roster bubble and there's so much that they're going through. Like, you're not drafted in the first round in the NFL. You don't have a guaranteed contract, but you're carrying the weight of bringing maybe your family out of a small home and giving them generational wealth and all of that stuff. You're carrying the pressure of that while still trying to make a team because you're an undrafted free agent, or you're a 6th-round pick, or you're the 7th-round pick, and now you're dealing with getting cut, getting released, but then signing with another team, and you're bouncing around from city to city trying to fit in. You're not guaranteed anything in life, even in the NFL or whatever sport it may be. That leads to a lot of challenges, a lot of mental health challenges, whether it's anxiety, depression, or whatever it may be. But now the last thing some of these guys want to do is go to a therapist so the team doesn't find out. And it's unfortunate. And there's so many ways that they've been set up. They can do that, whether it's through the Players Association, and it's just letting them know, hey, you have these options open to you. You should feel comfortable doing it. Don't feel that it's going to be viewed upon as a weakness.
Right. The kid who just killed himself down in LSU.
I didn't see that. I've been on vacation, so I didn't see that.
Yeah. I guess what he did, he was being chased by the cops, and he had been involved with. They say he had a gun on him. This is like a couple months ago. But my point is, are these kids getting more and more pressure as they get closer to becoming in the NFL? I mean, if they come out of college and they don't make the NFL, are they feeling like their life is over, gone?
If they don't have that foundation, that structure, the support that they need, I mean, it's an immense challenge. And even the guys who go in and play for 3, 4, 5, the average NFL career is 3 years.
3 years.
3, 4, 5 years. If they don't set themselves up for life after retirement, it's hard for them to they leave that environment, and now there's a big void. They don't have the camaraderie of the locker room. They don't have the daily physical training. They don't have everything that they're doing that's so regimented. Now they can go off the rails. So I think it's essential. It's so important for these guys to be able to be set up to handle the disappointment and the letdown, because that's got to come in college, and they got to be better equipped and better able to handle that as a pro by being prepared for it in college, because once it happens, once you're out in that real world, your career could be over like that. You could be at the top of the game, and you're one Achilles tendon tear away, or you're one ACL injury away from never being the same player again, to never getting that contract, never living up to those expectations, to being cut and having to go on and finding a career in something else. And that's where a lot of guys struggle in that transition. From life in the pros to life in the real world, it hits some folks a whole lot harder than it hits others.
Do you see that a lot, Rob?
I've talked to guys who tell me that they've dealt with it often. I've talked to a lot of guys who on both sides, those who have come out of it okay because they prepared for it, those who were in the league and even they weren't the biggest name player, they weren't making the most money, but they made enough to know how to set themselves up with small businesses, with investment opportunities to be able to transition more smoothly. And
Right.
then there are the guys who have hit rock bottom after coming out of the league and they got to start all over or they lose everything. How many players may end up in bankruptcy and lose all their money, end up broke, end up with nothing. And then the challenges then in their relationships and their marriage and as dads and husbands and everything else. So it's not the glamorous life that it's cracked up to be unless you
Right.
have a strong foundation, and you need that strong foundation.
Exactly. I'm going to change gears a little bit here. Have you met the GOAT? Have you ever have a conversation with him, Brady?
Yeah, Tom Brady. Yeah, I got to know him in Tampa a little bit, covering the team, and was really impressed by just how down to earth he is, how approachable he is. I will say it was in his last season. One of my girls dressed up as Tom Brady for Halloween, and I was able to show him like, hey, this is my daughter dressed up as you for Halloween. He thought it was really cool that and I told him how my daughters just came to become and they're flag football players now, but they came to become fans
Yep.
of the sport and wanting to play because of him, who at that time is at the tail end of his career, but had just won the Super Bowl. So I was really impressed just by how approachable he is, and then talking to other players on the Buccaneers and how they found like he walked up and introduced himself to a guy on a practice squad in the locker room. Now this is a guy on a practice squad who has been following Tom Brady for 20 years, who certainly knows who he is, and he's like. That's the humility there from the
Right.
greatest of all time to introduce himself. So he knew the names of people in the building who, whether they were working in the cafeteria or in janitorial. That to me is impressive because you're treating people with respect and with dignity and the way they deserve to be treated, and you're not putting yourself above others. So I think that's why he led so well. That's why he won so much,
Right.
because he was that kind of character person.
I've heard that about him. I have heard that he's got a big heart. I've seen him give the game balls, the kids in the stand who was beat cancer, jerseys. I just hear I've heard great things. Of course, he's a player. Of course, he's competitive. Is crazy competitive, but I've heard that same thing you said. Genuine heart, good person to the core, and that says a lot about his character, and he deserves every ounce of success that he's gotten.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are you working on, man? We're all working, striving to become better. What's on top of that list that you think in 12 months from now you're going to be a better person because you put it in place?
Yeah, well, the grind of the NFL season is about to start, but I've been working on a book on leadership, leading like a champion, but it's got a Christian mentality, perspective to it. So I'm working on that book. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to finish it, to get through it. Almost there. So that's an exciting step, and also with Faith on the Field, and we're stepping out into redesigning our website, launching a nonprofit ministry side to it to be able to get more resources to go out there and do some of the events that we do, where I go with an athlete and we go into schools and we go into wherever it is that they'll have us, and we'll talk about mental health issues. We'll talk about it from a faith perspective, all of that stuff. So hopefully the good Lord continues to bless me with opportunities and takes care of me and my family, and allows us to be able to glorify his name on bigger and bigger stages and bigger platforms by over the course of the next year.
Amazing. And to that point, let's see, you have one last mic drop to leave a message to the world. And what's Maaddi saying? What's your message to what's Maaddi's message to the world at that one last mic drop? What's that sound like?
Man, one last mic drop. I'll say this, and it's kind of reiterating, Brett, what I've said, the theme throughout, and that theme is this: that there is no joy, no peace that you will find in life that is greater than knowing our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Everything that you can accumulate, all the fame, all the glory, all the wealth, all the status pales in comparison to that. I've been there, I've chased it all, and I've been on the other side. And I know what it feels like to go through that, and I know what it feels like to find that hope, to find that joy, to find that inner peace, because I think that's what we're all looking for at the end of the day. We want to be able to sit down and just feel happy with ourselves,
Content.
to feel happy about ourselves. And for me, it's daily prayer, it's relationship with the Lord, it's listening to sermons, it's listening to positivity, it's helping other people, it's leaving a legacy behind of making a difference and being a blessing.
Right on, brother. And people are speaking of finding. How can people find you? They want to reach out to you, they learn more about you, they want to hear your messages because you're a huge inspiration. So how can they find Maaddi?
I appreciate that, man. On social media, at Rob Maaddi, Maaddi. Instagram, it's at Real Rob Maaddi, because apparently there was a fake out there at one point or another. FaithOnTheFieldShow.com is the website that's currently being redesigned, but the show airs on several radio stations across the country. The podcast is available wherever podcasts are found. So give it a like, give it a follow, give it a subscription, whatever it may be. And I try. It's hard to answer all my messages, but eventually there are moments in the day, or there are moments that, I might be 2, 3, 4 months late, but I try and get to everybody at some point, sooner or later. I
appreciate you, man. I told you when I began this interview, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. So new at this, getting up and started after being down for the count for 5 years. I'm 6 months into it, on my feet, trying to make a difference in people's lives. And you're a huge part of that, brother. I appreciate you. It's a huge inspiration and a blessing to get to know you. And one day I'm going to shake your hand, tell you to your face what a huge inspiration you are, not only to me, but to the world, brother. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for saying that, man. I appreciate it. And for someone who's doing this so new, 6 months and fresh, you ask questions like a pro, and you ask better questions than a lot of the people out there. That you do a great job, whether it's following up, whether coming to the table with the questions. I do a ton of interviews, and it was very enlightening, man. So I really appreciated your approach to this.
That means a lot to me. Coming from you, I take that very, very. It's an honor to hear that from you. And I know you're out there in Tampa. And John Cena, when you bump into him, I sent him 2 big XXL T-shirts, okay? And when you bump into him, by the way, the T-shirts were the size of my refrigerator. That's one big dude, right? you tell him, if you bump into him, ask him if you ever got those T-shirts for me, will you please?
I will. I absolutely will, man. Certainly.
And if you want one, you let me know. I'll get you one too.
I will. You send me one of those, I'll send you one of my Story, His Glory, Faith on the Field shirts.
All right, brother. I appreciate that. I'll do that.
All right.
All right, man. Good talking with you. You guys be fucking bold. I'll catch you in the next one. Over and out.
You got it. Take care.
All right, buddy.